What is up, YouTube? Let me just make sure my audio is the right camera. Okay. Everything looks good. Awesome. So, I watched this interview with Dr. Stephen Greer on Superfly with Dana Carvey and David Spade, who are both comedians from Saturday Night Live and Wayne's World. And well, David Spade wasn't in Wayne's World, but yeah, you get the idea. They're clowning on Stephen Greer, and pretty much the whole time it seemed, at least it kind of felt that way to an extent. Let's go to the most replayed part of the whole interview, which was this segment right here. So give you guys a quick idea of what this whole interview was about. Let me know if you can hear the audio. It should be shared.
You can start because we know we're going to ask you.
I'm talking to Ted Cruz, right? Ted, he's on now. Okay, I'll ask him that.
Oh, good. Far away, Ted.
No. Anyway, so is your head spinning, or you're looking at this from a completely different point of view than almost all of us in America? So what are your just basic thoughts about this phenomenon of things in the sky?
There you go.
Well, I mean, as you know, I've predicted this sort of thing would happen for 30 years. There's a covert rogue military component that is behind all these drone sightings. Some of them are drones, some of them are a little more advanced.
Drone sightings.
And most of them are part of a rogue military operation to basically create a psychological warfare effect in the media and in the public in advance of something that nobody knows is going to happen, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. So there's a group of
the psychological part is working, by the way. We're all scared.
We're all terrified. So
you should be. So this is very serious. So there's a group of guys who I've known for about 18, 19 months who are senior intel and aerospace operatives out of some desert locations. I'm not going to mention where they are. I've been to them, where most of the R&D testing and operations dealing with so-called UFOs, UAPs occur. Now, this guy, the main guy, has 6 other black sites, as they're called, operational sites that are very secretive, and are these particular ones are ones that are rogue and been running illegally for a long time. He is coming forward in the next 30 days or so, maybe less, with the evidence and unmasking himself and some of his operators, special forces guys, about what's going on at these sites, and with evidence. In other words, he's been operational when they have targeted and downed extraterrestrial vehicles. He's been present when they've tested man-made UFOs, which are mostly what people see, that are essentially anti-gravity craft. And he's been...
Okay, so let's get into the claims and the anti-gravity stuff, and we're going to get into the science and all the other stuff. But it's actually not that odd, because I was looking...
Present when...
I was looking up this interview, and I actually found out that he was on... he was on their show a couple months ago, and it only got like 200,000 views. And this one was a couple days ago, December 20th, right? 6 days ago, and it's got almost 2.5 million views on YouTube already. So this one got a significantly bigger response than the previous interview that Dana Carvey and David Spade did with Dr. Stephen Greer. So it's definitely interesting that it's gotten this many views. And it's also interesting that, Greer portrays himself as a technology expert or an expert on all these technologies and stuff. And I thought that was kind of laughable because, I've been researching. I haven't been doing this as long as him. I started getting into it because of Disclosure Project back in 2001. I really started getting into it like 2002, 2003. I didn't even hear about it when it first came out. I only heard about it later through the internet that this happened. So I wouldn't dare call myself an expert on all these things because there's so much once you really get into knowing the ins and outs of some of these programs. You really realize how big and complicated all this mess really is. So again, I have slide presentations and a lot of other material on this available. So yeah, there's a ton going back. I mean, the Nazis had metamaterials. Undoubtedly, we learned about metamaterials through Operation Paperclip when we brought some of this technology and learned over from Operation Paperclip and learned about U-480 and anechoic tiles and Nazi stealth technology. In addition to some of the Nazi time, early quantum mechanics investigations, it seemed that they were doing with the Project Kronos and the Nazi Bell. Other, this stuff's old news by now with what they know. A lot of occult history and just weird, deep intelligence matters behind the people who were involved in this, creating the Air Force right after Roswell. People from the Material Command and high-ranking whistleblowers coming out right after the Roswell the Air Force released its Roswell case closed report, saying that this whole thing of these UFOs and Roswell, its case is closed. Nothing to see here. And numerous researchers began digging into it even more after these whistleblowers came forward saying that, no, we've recovered stuff, and there's all these stovepiped programs and operations to secretly reverse engineer the technology, even though some of it can be traced to, seemingly human origins. There's certain things that just don't make sense. There's people from Naval Ordnance Research Labs talking about this metamaterial, late 1940s. There's a 1949 study that was done by Battelle into specifically into metallic alloys, dealing with here it is. So Battelle does this, commissioned to do this study in 1949. It's documented by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. It's done by Craighead, Fawn, and Eastwood. And in this report, they literally analyze titanium alloys with a specific focus on nickel titanium alloys. There's 3 pages focused on nickel titanium alloys. And then less than a decade after this is when nitinol is supposedly discovered at Naval Ordnance Research Labs. Nickel titanium alloy, NITINOL. It's named after nickel titanium and Naval Ordnance Research Labs, where it was allegedly discovered. But scientists like Elroy John Center have claimed that they handled alien technology while working for Battelle, and that Battelle was involved in a project to analyze titanium alloys of unknown origin and figure out and reverse engineer their composition and makeup and a little bit about them. So yeah, let's talk about the whole list of claims in this interview by Dr. Stephen Greer, rather than watching the whole thing and letting Greer tell them and go through. We'll go through all the claims that Greer makes and kind of give a breakdown here. UFO Disclosure. Greer claims that there's an ongoing effort to disclose UFO information to the public, but there's also significant resistance and disinformation from certain sectors within the government and military. You mean like people like Tom Bearden, who he focuses on almost exclusively in the whole science end of this, with his focus on he's an expert on the technology, but all he can talk about is Tom Bearden and scalar wave technology stuff, that Orion project. If you look up the Orion project, Stephen Greer, Orion project. I don't know what you can find on this anymore, but yeah, this is his website. It's still up here, the orionproject.org. And they raised over $1 million to come out with this free energy. And that was like over a decade or more ago. And they still haven't gotten this free energy off the ground and proved and shown yet. I'd be interested to see how that works. I think that free energy has been suppressed. The idea behind this, there are disinformation, but who's who? And who do you trust? Because I tell you, I trust the science and what you can prove in the laboratory with replicable experiments and what we can replicate, because there's a lot of people making claims that are just non-scientific and can't be replicated and aren't true, especially with regards to free energy and anti-gravity stuff. So who is who in this matter is a big contention, and there's accusations just flying everywhere. In this chat, I got people saying, "Oh, Stephen Greer is a disinformation agent." Where's that comment? Yeah, here we go. The Red Pill Informer saying that Greer's a government-sanctioned propagandist. He's not to be trusted. Well, don't trust anyone. Fact check and verify the claims yourself, which is what everyone should do. The unfortunate part is that Greer is just not as well. He's a country medical doctor. He doesn't have degrees in physics or real science, and doesn't have a technical understanding and background to really help him out and figure out who's who, especially in regards to being an expert on the technology, which I thought was pretty funny. Government cover-up too. Okay, so who's who? Yeah, again, it's really tough to tell. I got people in the chat here saying that, Greer's the government propagandist. I got, Ashton Forbes telling me that, Jack Sarfati's the government propagandist, and that, he's all on Sal Pais's side. And then I got people on my team who think that Sal Pais is the disinformation agent, and Ashton Forbes is a disinformation agent, and that Jack Sarfati's really the one who's telling the truth. So who's who? It's there's going to be these crazy accusations that fly. Again, I tell you who I think is a disinformation agent. It's the people with getting the most visibility, because when you start talking about real stuff, you'd lose the visibility, and that's the thing. They would never, if he was on there dropping real scientists and about the space-based weapons program, if he was really dropping knowledge and real detailed stuff about the space-based weapons program, on this show, then it would not have gotten 2.5 million views. It would have been shut down. I believe. I don't know. From my experience, but we'll see. Again, there are so many technologies out there, not just these ones. There's some type of energy source that's used in these metal ingots of isotope conversion or something going on in these metal objects that have been dropped by UFOs historically and recovered and analyzed by the military. And that's documented with this 1940 CIC document of a flying saucer in May 1947. April, I think it was April 1947. It passed through a number of hands before eventually, I think it ended up at Battelle, and who knows where it is or where it went. There's stories about these people, recovering these types of, technologies, and there's apparently leftover stovepiped operations from the Manhattan Project, a company that we've talked about on this show before, who literally made the demon cores for the Manhattan Project, the most classified, component of the Manhattan Project. And they currently run all of our national laboratories, including the United States. They co-manage on behalf of the Department of Energy. So it's DOE, deep state, higher clearance than the president has type of organization. And if you want to know where it is, and it's literally right there under people's noses, they studied the history of the Manhattan Project, and they know the history of these classified physics programs, and they'll understand, what goes on at these national laboratories with the patent holding companies and the literal patent trolling. Just a continuation of what Thomas Edison did to technology, that he found. He would basically steal other people's ideas, patent it, take credit. In some cases, a boycott or try to shelve or discredit alternative technologies just for the sake of your own business benefits. So he had the DC power company. He was working on all this DC stuff, and then Tesla came along with the AC, and he got all like, what is this? And fought it for no reason. Killed an elephant just in public to try to show people how bad this AC current was, and did all this other nonsense that's all history now. But there are organizations that exist to keep these technologies secret for a reason. There are national security implications of these technologies. But I'm much more worried about our government using these technologies against us, as we know that they're willing to kill people to cover up the truth about some of these technologies, where they burned all these materials in a burn pit to try to dispose of and destroy of the research and the technology. And this guy's got really sick, and they just tried to cover it up. Go look into the Fred Dunham story if you haven't heard of that already. It's definitely something that should be more widely talked about on a lot more channels and stuff. The whole metamaterials thing goes super deep back into Thomas Townsend Brown's work in the 50s, and of course the Nazis knowing about the metamaterials, and the Americans being fascinated with them ever since. There's a number of companies that work on metamaterial technologies that are connected to in addition to other types of materials that are optical, have optical advantages when used appropriately. And then the whole issue of quantum radar with entangled photon pairs, and using entangled photons and a sort of entanglement checking system to determine if your photon's been manipulated with, or so you can tell if your photon is genuine or if it's been decoupled or disentangled, which is not perfect, because there's lots of other things that can disentangle your photons, in addition to invisible aircraft using optical cloaking or metamaterial cloaking technologies. So other types of technologies which could interfere with your radar systems might not be as detectable through such systems, but certain types of systems are detectable with this quantum radar technology, which is again one of the top secret countermeasures to the already countermeasures that they're working on. So anyways, Bonson Labs, yeah, there was a whole anti-gravity conference, tons of secret work with our top scientists like Richard Feynman attending as Mr. Smith at the secret anti-gravity conference, where Herman Bondi kind of comes up with this whole idea of that, would be taught to his graduate student Joseph Weber. I forget who Weber studied under, but he went on to do his whole thing on this Weber bars, the idea of the sticky bead argument, which became the basis for how LIGO detects gravitational waves. Then all the classified laser physics stuff with these super high energy lasers. Well, you cross the beams of two lasers. It's the first thing they tried to do when they made these lasers, was to try to, figure out what you could do with these lasers. And when you cross the beams of the lasers, it makes this plasma in the air and this glowing orbs of light. And if you shine the beams on objects, you can get them to propel through space. And there's a whole bunch of study that was done on that. They recruited a guy named Dr. Lake Mirabeau, and shelved this technology. It was all going to be on, and according to 90s television programs like Future Fantastic, they talked about this technology like it was going to be the future of space travel and NASA and everything. And NASA did nothing with it, hasn't talked about it. Elon said that it's just not as much bang for the buck. I mean, you get further with the rockets that he's building in that way to do it than with this stuff that he's seen. So it's just not. But someone might be using it, especially with ultralight vehicles like the aerogels or the like Josh Berntrand mentioned, or these Lake Marabou's metallic discs. There's also the idea of using metamaterials of these phase conjugate mirrors to as targets, because no matter which way you shine at a phase conjugate mirror, it reflects back to the source, so you can get a nice projection and reflection on the target. Anyways, there's patents on this. This is the patent for flow modification of other aircraft and vehicle flight paths using lasers, optically generated plasmas on the surface. And then they've also talked about these ICBMs are tipped with a nose cone that actually produces this plasma ball ahead of the nose cone, which reduces the bow shock. It literally displaces all the air and creates a vacuum tunnel by superheating and supercavitating the air with it superheats it with such force that it supercavitates the air passage in front of the ballistic missile warhead. So you can actually get this air spike, and where you can have hypersonic flow. It's like a normal bullet goes into water and just has all this turbulence and all that energy is being absorbed into the water and shot every which way. But if you are able to eliminate all the water and make a straight hollow path, the bullet will just go right through the water like nothing. And that's the idea of removing all the air with these hypersonic air spikes. And there's a ton of technology into that. Again, this is, you look into the Kantrowitz limit and why they abandoned the whole ramjet concept of hypersonics and said, oh, you can't get jet engine is clearly not. Jet engines are useful, they're cool, but if you want to go hypersonic, jet engine is not the way to go. And Kantrowitz showed that there's a limit, and so they said, well, how do we get things to go faster than jet speed? And this is the whole solution to that. Again, there's been billions of dollars dumped into this in top secret programs and stuff, but again, you get Stephen Greer on Superfly joking with Garth about the damn scalar waves and Tom Bearden stuff. So Colonel Thomas Bearden, he's fantastic claims of free energy, anti-gravity, and whatnot. And what happens when you really dig into his work? Well, I have a PhD physics buddy of mine who did just that, and you won't be able. I don't know. You search Colonel Thomas Bearden and David Chester. I don't think it comes up. Oh yeah, right here. If you search Thomas Bearden and David Chester, this hopefully will come up. Physics from the Fringe with David Chester. If you can't find it that way, you can go to my Alien Scientist channel and search just my videos and find it that way. I know some people have problems with the search algorithms and returning my videos. If you're subscribed to me, it generally will help fix that problem with the algorithm to a certain degree. Although, please, report your results back to me if in what country you're in, if you have problems accessing my videos and which videos and what. But yeah, David Chester, he's got some links in here to his paper that he wrote, and we talk about and analyze all the Thomas Bearden stuff in this interview. And we talk a little bit about the whole idea of what is a scalar wave and what do we mean by scalar waves, and this whole idea of wave interferometry, right? So you have interference in waves, and you can have destructive interference, and you get these destructive and constructive interference patterns, which create fringes, and the fringes again are just what you see as these little ripples, and you can count the fringes, you count the wavelengths. Sometimes you can use that to measure distance. There's so there's real science to this. You create this interferometry interference pattern. Some weird things occur, but then the other idea is that you create these two longitudinal waves at an angle to one another, and you get this fringe shift at the boundaries. And so you can create these complex wave patterns, and then that can create some interesting geometries and stuff, as we know from the cymatics and just the general patterning of the waves on a regular round surface, which is super fascinating. The number of different patterns and resonances that appear and you can come up with by vibrating different frequencies on a plate. So, and combinations of frequencies and whatnot. But yeah, it's a buck boost generator, right? That's the idea. There's been a lot of free energy scam, which people have tried to show this stuff as free energy generators, and it's just a buck boost generator, a buck boost converter, right? So it's just you're just stepping up certain aspects of the power and the current output, and it's not actually getting more free energy out than you're putting in. So thermodynamics and entropy, again, very difficult real problems to deal with in engineering and science, real science that real scientists do, as opposed to guys who take $1 million for their Orion project and Anyways, I won't diss Stephen too much for the bad things that he's done. Let's compliment him on the good things that he's done, and let's play this video real quick here, because this was one of the most important witnesses from the Disclosure Project that came forward, in my opinion. There are some really good Disclosure Project witnesses. There are some not so good Disclosure Project witnesses. A lot of the free energy scammers that got a hold of Stephen Greer through the Disclosure Project, I think, were disinformation agents who derailed and sort of misled Stephen Greer. Don't think Stephen Greer is necessarily a disinformation agent himself. I think he has a huge ego and is really full of himself a lot. So he kind of has some oversights into how much he really understands or knows about these systems and the technologies involved, especially when he claims to be an expert on all that stuff, which, if you're still on Tom Bearden, which is stuff you talked about 20 years ago with the Disclosure Project, then no, you're not an expert. But anyways, yeah, you should definitely, I wish that, I know that he's dug into some of my stuff, and I know that he talks about in this interview, in the interview on Dana Carvey, he talks about actually the disclosure database and all the stuff. And I helped contribute a ton. I gave him like our full database one of early on. So a lot of his documents and the stuff in the database is actually our database that we gave to, I personally gave to his wife Emily and some of the Disclosure Project people, and also to Danny Sheehan. So
when I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77, I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. Von Braun's purpose in life during the last years of his life, his dying years, was to educate the public and decision makers about why space-based weapons are a dumb, dangerous, destabilizing, too costly, unnecessary, unworkable, undesirable idea. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in 74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now, at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids, we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. That the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there and too late. In 1977, I was at a meeting in Fairchild Industries in a conference room called the War Room.
Yes, this is interesting. I think it's the Rand Corporation think tanks that he was on that were really planning and setting up a lot of this stuff back then. Keep in mind, this was early 2000s when this all went down. So it wasn't Armageddon and the movie Armageddon was 1998, and also the movie Deep Impact was the same year, 1998. Really weird that they made two movies about using space-based, using NASA to intercept asteroids headed for Earth, like big giant killer asteroids. So kind of weird in 1998, two big Hollywood movies come out with this same idea. Really weird. Really interesting. But what she's talking about is a bit more interesting, because it's like there's this whole top secret, NSA and other intelligence apparatus that has been, putting spy satellites in space and putting space-based weapons into space. There was Project Excalibur, as you remember, with the Star Wars program in the 1980s. So not only did they go to Rensselaer Polytech, a really just obscure technical university off the radar, to recruit Lake Marabou for the laser, projectile propulsion technology research, which is weird because they didn't do it out of MIT or Caltech or Lockheed Martin. They did it out of Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute in the 1980s, which is just, it just shows you how they operate and go about things sometimes. But then the Project Excalibur stuff, which was this whole idea that they're going to find a way to blast stuff out of the sky. But the problem is that how do you get a power plant in space to power your laser? That was the biggest issue with the space-based weapons idea and the whole Star Wars idea, is that, in order to get that power in space, is you basically had to have an H-bomb up in space floating around in a satellite, and then you set the H-bomb off with just inside of this mirror cavity where there'd be one hole in it where it would basically carry a bunch of X-rays and shoot it out one end when you blasted off this H-bomb. And so you got to blast off an H-bomb, put a ton of radiation into space to get a little bit of power out and hope that you hit the nuke and take out the nuke with it. So it's kind of like, really, this is the best we could come up with. So I guess the idea is that they've put out a lot of disinformation to try to convince our enemies or convince the public or whoever, for some reason, that we have free energy inside these space-based weapons systems, and that we don't need to worry about blasting off H-bombs in space or any of the power issues that were really plagued the technical science of building these space-based weapons systems. So they've really convinced a lot of the public that they have free energy now, and that free energy is powering all these space-based weapons systems, and that's an interesting concept and an interesting idea in itself, which I have not seen evidence for yet, but I'm open to if such evidence does exist. But it just seems a little bit extreme and outrageous. So what they do have is some lasers they probably have lasers that could start a fire from space. Laser pointers that start a fire are not uncommon. That you can buy them on the internet. If you want to get a laser that lights cigarettes or lights pieces of paper on fire, you can get that. So but the idea is that the idea of using this as a planned hoax. So this is the important thing about this interview and what she's exposing. So not that let's get back on track and less off the technical capabilities and of the actual space-based weapon systems. Let's listen to what she has to say.
This is 1977, and they were talking about creating a war in the Gulf region when there was $25 billion in the space-based weapons program that yet had not been identified. It wasn't called the Strategic Defense Initiative, at least, until 1983. This weapon system then had obviously been going on for some time that I didn't know anything about. So I stood up in this meeting in 1977 and it said, I'd like to know why we're talking about space-based weapons against these enemies. I'd like to know more about this. Would somebody tell me what this is about? Nobody answered. They went on with this meeting as though I hadn't said anything.
Dr. Carol Rawson is one of over 450 witnesses who have come forward with inside information that they were told to shut up about.
Oh, the good old days. This was 14 years ago, man. I recorded this and made this video. She's a beast, though. I tried to get her on the interview, man, but she's I don't know what she's doing these days. She exposes the idea that there were these land-based, ship-based. No, so let's talk a little bit more about some of these space-based weapons systems and stuff themselves, because that is kind of interesting stuff. There's kinetic weapons, right? What are kinetic weapons? Rods from God. You ever heard of those? Rods from God. Rods from God. Kinetic bombardment. So they have this telephone pole sized bar of tungsten, and they drop it from space and have a directional thrust system on it where, this tungsten bar, or maybe maybe not the size of a telephone pole. They have ones that big for real high kinetic energy, because you start getting that thing. I mean, by the time it hits orbital velocity and by the time it drops in to re-entry or whatever, it's going like 8 kilometers a second, or Mach 24. And when that thing hits, it just it obliterates and has the kinetic energy equivalent to approximately 11.5 tons of TNT. So it's a massive amount. Oh yeah, dude, hell yeah. $5 super chat from Hellfire Studios. Thank you so much. It's been a rough Christmas, man, and that really helps, man. That's awesome. I can buy a bunch of new equipment and stuff. By the way, I'm working on some Are you still on here? By the way, thank you so much for that. The rods from God stuff is pretty amazing technology. When you look at that, that's the kinetic weapons, space-based weapons. There's also the talking plasma balls with the laser-induced plasma, right? And I showed that video on the last stream with some of that other stuff. Oh, we could talk into some of these other technologies and stuff in a second. I've been watching all and keeping up on all this buzz on the internet about the different technologies and whatnot. But yeah, Werner von Braun telling Carol that then the last card, Carol, is going to be the faked alien invasion. And here we are with drones, the aliens flying over New Jersey that were just so kind to use, traffic lights and stuff. But let's talk about these drones for a second, because I just gotta say, again, this is the scalar wave document from the CIA, scalar wave document. And yeah, we had David Chester go over all this physics and really do a deep dive into all this stuff. Really good issue on this. A lot of physics forums, talking about this whole scalar wave pseudoscience and fringe nonsense. That it's just this term that they throw around and don't really understand what that means, or scalar has the scalar, vector, tensor are just ways of defining whether objects have direction and magnitude. So scalar has magnitude but no direction, whereas a vector has magnitude and direction. And the idea, if you have a field, a vector field plot where scalar, you can turn vectors into scalars, or waves into scalars, or vice versa. That's not hard to understand. So yeah, thank you for the $5 super chat, and that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the talk on this stuff. But yeah, the physics forums have a lot to say about this scalar wave thing, and I get the idea of destructive interference and interferometry, and you can just, you'll get these points where there's a constructive interference, and then these points where there's destructive interference. So that it's kind of like the quiet seats in the amphitheater problem. But the whole idea of them using these weapons against us, again, they're not going to fake alien drones with the ballistic kinetic energy weapons, but certainly the light shows and stuff that they can put out, and the coordinated drone displays and whatnot certainly would be. But what is going on in New Jersey, drones in New Jersey, because these drones flying over New Jersey, again, may not be all these technologies that we're talking about. They may not have anything to do with this. They may be something else entirely. The government response is key on this, and very, very interesting to pay attention to, right? So the government response on this is that they have said, first off, that they don't know what they are, but they're not a threat. So they're not a threat. It sounds to me like they're ours, and that I like the idea. There's a couple narratives going around that they're Chinese spy drones or Russian spy drones that are spying on targets that they're interested in, going around these nuclear sites and spying on heavy radiation targets. There's an idea that they're aliens that are interested in our nuclear for the same reasons. There is the idea that they are an advanced, data collection and reconnaissance type drone with see-through wall technology, or X-ray shortwave or X-ray wave technology, millimeter wave technology that can see through clothing, and then some of these higher powered systems that could potentially see through walls, like in the movie Eraser. That movie Eraser, where they have the guns, and the idea that they have these guns that can see through the walls. Well, they have some technology to see through walls, in fact, but that really didn't. I don't know. There might have been some more classified stuff that we don't know about where they developed this earlier on. It's hard to say what SAIC and Northrop Grumman got the contracts, though, from DARPA in 2009. We know that. They got the contracts to develop terahertz power amplifier technology for military applications. SAIC won $11 million, and Northrop Grumman Systems won $8.8 million. And the Northrop Grumman Space and Mission Systems won a $37.3 million contract as well. These contracts are with DARPA's Microsystems Technology Office. So that was 2009. Of course, 2014, we have the Nimitz encounter and MH370 and a bunch of other, stuff that happened these years. Or it was Nimitz 2007. I forget. There's some, I always confuse gimbal and all that. So right around this same time, though, it's interesting. So SAIC, though, we know that they were working on see-through wave technology even earlier than that, because SAIC if you go back, they were working on the airport scanners. Leidos Corporation, which used to be a SAIC. SAIC is now Leidos Corporation. They developed these full body scanners, for the airports, where you step in the machine to go through the airport, and it scans your whole body, and they claim it doesn't take pictures and save pictures of your naked skin underneath, but we don't. There's been some controversy on that as well. If you read the article on this on just on Wikipedia there, but again, backscatter X-ray is measuring the backscatter from X-rays. It introduces people to a little bit more radiation than other techniques, but it's much more effective than say blowing people with cold and hot air and measuring the thermal response to the outside of their clothes, like was one of the techniques that they were using for a while. But I just want to, before I get to lose this, I just seen this. Battelle UFO Metallurgy through a $50 super chat out there. Merry Christmas. Keep the faith, brother. This guy is the best. You are awesome, man. He's been helping expose the Battelle stuff for quite a while now. And yeah, man, I'm so glad people are not letting this topic die and really getting on this. I really hope that when the new administration takes over in January, we can get some people doing some very serious investigations and research into to connecting all the dots on, when we start to go back to the JFK assassination and the RFK assassination, those deep state, Lockheed Skunk Works and whatnot, those contracts and the contractors involved with those assassinations cannot be forgotten, cannot be undermined. So yeah, I think this is awesome. A new anti-gravity project. Are you not on the APEC email list already and whatnot? I mean, my email's out there. It's not hard to find. It's the alien scientist at Gmail. If you want to email me. Anyways, yeah, let's talk about this. All right, so number 2, the claims that Stephen Greer makes in this interview on Superfly. So get back on topic here. Government cover-up. He asserts that there have been a long-standing cover-up by the U.S. government and military regarding UFOs, which involves not just the existence of UFOs, but also advanced technology derived from them. It's undetermined whether this is true or false. While no tangible direct evidence has been provided for this claim, to support this claim, several whistleblowers have given sworn testimony indicating that this is indeed the case. As I mentioned, Colonel Philip Corso, whether you believe him or not, I know there's controversy over that. There's Jesse Marcel and Colonel Du Bois, the 2 intelligence officers who were first-hand witnesses to the crash debris, who flew it from Roswell Army Airfield to Fort Worth, Texas, where General Ramey held that press conference and allegedly switched the real material with a weather balloon. They showed the weather balloon to the press while the real material was quietly and secretively flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where June Crane, one of the secretaries at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, who worked there for that time period and many years afterward, reported that she had heard and taught stories and seen not just rumors, but actually seen the memory foil at one point. The actual memory foil, which has been a controversial topic in the Roswell thing for me personally. Robert Sarbacher, Lance Corporal Jonathan Wagan, who was another Disclosure Project witness, testified to that craft that he saw. He was part of a platoon, and they were sent down to the jungle of Peru or Brazil to go and recover this craft. And he says there was purple liquid coming out of it with the green that glowed green and purple depending on which way you looked at the liquid. They had to secure the area, and then they eventually brought teams in there to clean everything up and get rid of everything. And he doesn't know where it went or what happened to it after that, but it was the craziest security and the we're very shocking experience. If you look up Jonathan's testimony there, kind of been forgotten about. Someone went and tracked him down recently and did another more recent interview with him that got not nearly as much attention as I thought it should. But anyways, reverse engineered technology. Greer mentions that technologies particularly related to free energy have been reverse engineered from UFOs, but are currently being withheld from public use due to economic and power structures. This is undetermined. The origins of the Navy's apparently discovery of nitinol is a bit suspicious, as given the testimony of Elroy John Center and those documents that we pointed out with the whole Battelle titanium alloy studies that were done. They were trying to figure out nickel titanium alloys back in the late 1940s with this memory foil stuff, is what it really looks like. Behind the scenes, if you look at the literature, it's undetermined, man. That's not direct proof that we did discover nitinol, that nitinol came from ETs and it's related to ET. It might have been Russians figured it out first and had this. I don't know. It could have been anything. But again, it's very interesting, the origins of the nitinol stuff, and also the origins of quasi-crystals coming from being discovered by a material scientist who did his postdoc at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the 70s, allegedly, discovering quasi-crystals, which is interesting. Free energy is the big part of this, though. The reverse engineered, the claims of free energy. Greer discusses the potential of free energy technology, suggesting that devices for producing clean, unlimited energy have been developed, but are suppressed to maintain the status quo in energy markets. Cold fusion was definitely suppressed. They've put so many billions into hot fusion research, and they always just say it's 5 years away, it's 4 years away, it's right around the corner. We just need more money and more funding. And then they get a bunch more funding and investors. They build it, and then they, say, "Oh crap, it's not quite working. We need to do this instead. We now know, and now we need, this much money to do it." And it's always just raise the bar higher. I have yet to see the government fund cold fusion research. Cold fusion's been associated with free energy and scamology, and is blacklisted from. You can't even patent a cold fusion device. If you wanted to, if you invented one, you couldn't patent it because it's already blacklisted within the patent office. So there's energy of that. I mean, evidence of that, but there's no. I haven't seen any one of these people who claim they get free energy. Like Tom Bearden was still paying in a power bill. How's he giving interviews telling people he's, mastered free energy? Why, if you figured all this stuff out for Huntsville, Alabama, working on top secret programs down at a Redstone Arsenal there as an electronics engineer or whatever he was back in the day, then why are you paying an electric bill? Why aren't you running your house off this free energy stuff? So it's one of the things you really have to ask these free energy scammers before you fall for their nonsense. And there's quite a bit of nonsense out there with regards to free energy machines, and buy the parts, buy the plans for the free energy machine for 50 or $100 online, and you can power your own house, and just a quick way to scam you out of making the money. And it won't work, of course, but fusion is real. Fusion's definitely real. Could be something. So number 5, Greer claims the military-industrial complex has been involved in the secrecy, suggesting that it's not just about national security, but also about economic control. Well, duh. Yeah, all the military and want to keep this classified so they can control it. And it's not just economic, but also, using it against us and the upcoming false flag invasion that's coming, right? ET contact and CE5 protocols. He describes his method of initiating contact with extraterrestrials through what he calls a close encounter of the fifth kind, CE5, where humans use meditation and consciousness to make contact. So I've talked to some people that claim that this worked for them, and they summoned red balls of spheres of light that came down and talked to them and weird stuff, So, but I've never had my own personal experience or any luck with that. I don't know. I'm undetermined on that claim. It hasn't worked for me. I don't know. I've met a couple people that said that, yeah, it works for them. Great. I don't know why it doesn't work for me, but it's cool. Nonetheless, it's just not replicable science, so I don't know what to make of it. Black budget programs. Greer claims that there are secretive black budget programs funded by taxpayers where advancements in technology and UFO research are conducted without public oversight. Well, I just mentioned, the Battelle, creation of the Demon Corps, which of course was a higher, didn't require any government oversight because it was the highest classified part of the Manhattan Project, had a higher security clearance than I think even the president had access to. So yeah, we know where these programs exist and have existed since the 1940s in the Manhattan Project. They're still there. They didn't go away. They're still there. We know where they are. Whistleblowers and testimonies. He references numerous whistleblowers from various sectors, military, intelligence, industry, who have all come forward with information supporting his claims. Right. Some of those people might be disinformation agents. Again, back to number 1. So who do you trust? And who's who? That's where we're back to. Number 9, global implications. Greer suggests that the disclosure of these technologies could solve major global issues like climate change, poverty, and energy scarcity, if not for the vested interests in maintaining current economic models. Well, I don't know what to say about that, man. About to open it up for other people to jump on and give their whole take on this. Because then, yeah, which ones do you believe? Again, this goes back to number 1. Global implications. Greer suggests that the disclosure of these technologies could solve major global issues like, all these economic models, right? Okay. If we had free energy, it would solve all those things. Great. If we didn't have energy scarcity, it would solve all those things. But you don't. You have people claiming that they have that and taking money, and took $1 million in funding for the Orion project, and you gave people nothing, and I don't know what you did with the money or any of where the research is with it, but that's what I would ask you if I interviewed you, Mr. Greer. Put your expertise and your science where your mouth is, sir. Who knows, man? I know a lot of people have some suspicions about him and stuff, but I know that cold fusion is definitely more real than Stephen Greer has been. Has more. Not real for everybody though. Again, Caltech couldn't get cold fusion to work because they didn't get the loading high enough, according to MIT, the later MIT scientists who did get it working. Not the original MIT scientists that did the replication of Pons and Fleischmann's work, were whistleblowers like was the guy that was killed there, Malone, Malin. Who's the guy that was Fire and Ice, right? Fire and Ice is his name. Malov, Eugene Malov, the guy that was killed from, the cold fusion researcher. Yeah. So he documented how MIT covered up the discovery of cold fusion originally. And then looks like they killed him for it. Not really sure what happened to him. But yeah, Eugene Malov, and then the later guys at MIT, if you go to my channel and you search for MIT cold fusion, you'll find the whole colloquium conference that was put on by this one right here, 2014. I went to MIT and took a course with Dr. Peter Hagelstein and Dr. Mitchell Schwartz on cold fusion. And you can watch some of those lectures and those courses here on the channel. I have them saved. Real thorough, technical, deep dive investigation into cold fusion. Go to coldfusionnow.org for more archives of those conferences and that information. But definitely Mitchell Schwartz and Dr. Peter Hagelstein were able, Hagelstein was not the experimentalist, but Schwartz was able to replicate cold fusion at MIT under controlled conditions. So it is very definitely real, according to the scientists that I've talked to, and they had a colloquium with scientists from all over the world that were very definitely not deluding themselves or tricking themselves or tricking other people or wasting their time on something that wasn't real. So the cold fusion thing is definitely suppressed. And I don't, when I see guys like Greer on podcasts that get 2.5 million views talking about free energy and, the Tom Bearden kind of idea of this all and the space-based weapons that are, because if you had free energy, of course, your space-based weapons just got super, super strong, and you just got OP space-based weapons because you don't have to worry about the power that goes into them because they're free energy. You can just overpower them. So yeah, it definitely complicates. It makes things easier for the engineering, but it also makes it, just doesn't make sense because it's bullshit. It's nonsense. That's why it doesn't make sense. But yeah, if you had some kind of cold fusion set up where you could convert, the energy, but again, where is the cold fusion experiment or the cold fusion proof that you can get that much energy out? Because you get excess energy in all these cold fusion experiments, but the question the engineers always go to Mitchell Schwartz and say, yeah, sure, you get cold fusion working in your lab and in these experiments and stuff, but can you boil me a cup of water? All you need to do is boil a cup of water and you can make steam. If you can find a way to use cold fusion to make steam, you can get a power plant going. And then that's going to be serious. Yeah, so there's definitely an Overton window. I feel like it's coming open, but this free energy honeypot is definitely diluting the conversation, definitely confusing and obfuscating the science and the technologies involved, especially I hope that, people do get interested in the technologies through this interview, because, Stephen Greer does make a lot of wild and outlandish claims about free energy and anti-gravity technology. And I hope that at least gets some people to, I hope that has the positive effect, rather than, scientists listening to this and saying, oh, well, that's all the science that he's talked about is Tom Bearden. So that's the only scientist he mentions, Tom Bearden. And look into that stuff. They kind of like, all right, well, this is nonsense, and moving along now and losing interest. And if they think that's the only science involved in this, or just like the same with Bob Lazar, it works on that level, I believe, to make scientists look at the UFO topic like, oh yeah, element 115 and this nonsense view of science. Yeah, I'll pass and not, destroy my career and risk ruining my entire reputation by getting myself involved with such complete and utter nonsense and bullshit. First swear of the night. There it goes. I had to let it slip out. But the idea is that, yeah, very well rehearsed word salad. Sorry, that's a good way to put it, man. He has that confidence builders where he says that, I'm an expert at these technologies. I've been studying these things for, so long. I've debriefed presidents, I briefed presidents on this stuff. Yeah, that's the way that Greer tries to come off and portray himself as. But, listening to him, of course, claim that he's super knowledgeable and an expert on these technologies, and then only be able to name one scientist, the guy who's not even really a scientist, is like an electrical engineer that works for some, Huntsville on some stuff, and had some interesting ideas on these Hertz vectors and the dilatons, right? This whole idea. Anyways, it's a whole bunch of physics. David gets deep and into it and really explains it quite well. So I encourage you to get David on to talk about the Hertz vector and the dilatons, and really put a kibosh on this whole idea that you can get free energy out of the vacuum somehow. I'm not Dr. Jim. I'm not a scientist, damn it. Yeah, I wish he was, man. It was like, I wish more people knew the science, at least enough to be interested in it. I wish I knew the science better. I know a lot of this stuff. I know a heck of a lot more than Stephen Greer does about science and technology of UFOs and advanced projects, and interviewing people who worked at Area 51 and talking to people who actually worked on these technologies and the top of the line and experts on these things. I don't claim to be an expert on any of this stuff. I'm just a researcher and a guy who's into all this stuff. So when I see Stephen Greer claim to be an expert on this, it just makes me kind of cringe, and I just feel bad for any scientists watching that think that who watched that interview and stopped their research there before, because they think that this is what UFO science is, and not what you're seeing on this channel, Alien Scientist. So make sure you smash that like button and the subscribe button on this video and the channel, guys, so you can get future updates, and also it helps with the algorithm. With if you didn't like the video, you can smash thumbs down too. I don't care. It helps with the engagement in the algorithm either way. So yeah, TD Barnes is great, man. The guy really worked out at Area 51, and he was one of my favorite interviews. I really wish he had a better microphone. It was hard to hear him. sometimes, but he definitely walked away knowing that I asked him because I watched all of TD Barnes interviews before that one, and I'm like, I'm going to ask him all those questions that, pick all the best questions from all the other interviews he did, plus ask him all these good questions that I wanted, and I got every single one in that interview, and we just nailed a whole bunch of stuff. It was yeah. So. And I joke around a lot, man. I'm like I'm not always serious about everything too, but I try to, approach it in a serious tone, or just a tone of curiosity and wanting to understand more, because we all have to learn somehow, in some way, and someday. So, and I'd love to be proven wrong. If you got free energy, and I'm and Tom Bearden's legit, and me and my physics PhD friends are wrong, and then show us, man. Change the world. Let's do it. So bring it on. But right now it seems like there's some psyops and disinformation going around to convince people that capabilities exist that don't exist. And what is the point of that? Who could possibly be behind that? Because that is the key takeaway, is that these technologies don't exist, but you have people disinforming the public, telling them that they do exist, and disinforming them about what technologies and capabilities do exist. That sounds to me like there's some massive preparation for technologies to be used on people with a disadvantage to know about what is being done to them. So, the psychological, think about psychologically what they could do with these things. I don't know. It just seems to me that it's more likely us. I like the idea that, that these drones were because you find a lot of the commercial drones and stuff on the market, and it's ones that are looking to detect radiation. So they want to be able to scan for threats. You could scan people's backpacks, make sure no one's carrying a dirty bomb into the Boston Marathon, or no one's carrying a pressure cooker in their backpack into a crowd of people that's packed with explosives or something. So that I could see where these applications would be good to have, and would help people, and be a good thing. So some of these things are all right. You want these things to exist, and them to be flying around, and I don't know about shooting us with X-rays and dangerous ionizing radiation, but if you had non-interfering, non-ionizing radiation, ways to scan people, that might be, I guess there could be an argument for it. But then you look at these companies, and a lot of them are actually looking to go into dangerous areas and monitor radiation levels, or other gases, or like the canary in the coal mine kind of a concept. So the idea is that these drones we're looking for some lost nuclear material, that like some nuclear stuff went missing. So these drones are out scanning everything to try to find out where this nuke went, like a broken arrow type of scenario. That's one theory. The other theory is that, that there are these Chinese drones that are equipped with this terahertz wave, infrared and ultraviolet wave scanning technology, wide spectrum, analysis, where they can also shine a laser and get like geospatial data back from, they shine a laser grid on the area, and then measure the grid to get geospatial data in addition to optical data, where the optical map can be overlaid with a geospatial map. Yeah, very similar to how the Matterport software works to map a room. They have the Matterport camera that can capture, and it captures in 3D and literally creates a whole like 3D model of the room through a bunch of photographs, which are aligned with geospatial data, because it has in the eye, it has a laser that shoots out a grid, and it sees that, and with one camera, the infrared camera, shoots out an infrared grid, and the infrared grid captures that and overlays the data so that you can get 3D modeling of images and stuff. And so that idea is the same idea that it can model a room with this camera, taking a couple pictures and overlaying it with the geospatial data. The same idea as they can do with mapping physical world facilities and like military installations or the FBI building or what have you. So, you know, any target building which is going to become a target for them, they could map with some of these technologies, potentially including see-through wall technology. I don't know the full extent of that or the capabilities of that. I haven't seen it enough of it or had enough hands-on experience. But if you know someone who's an expert who does have experience with that, please email me at thealienscientist@gmail.com. I'd love to get you on the show if you have more expertise on any of these things than the average bear, or you know a guy, pass it along, and trying to get the best experts who will talk to us in the industry to really open up and share on this. So yeah, the 3D body scanning technologies, pretty wild. And again, there's people that have been aware but couldn't control these sensitive operations. The important one is, I think, JFK being aware of a lot of the stuff, and then there being suspicions that he was part of his murder was to do with disclosure and what he knew. But yeah, a lot of that's conjecture. Let's stick with the facts. Star jelly is a real stuff that falls from the sky. There was a date in 1994 was the 97 Everett, Washington area. Yeah, there's been some weird incidents of this weird jelly that gets you sick falling from the sky. So anyways, is it aliens? Is it what? It goes way back. So curious. The UFO timeline. Just want to drop a quick shout out to the UFOtimeline.com. Yeah, it's kind of like the black goo that rained down. That's a real thing, dude. The black goo story. Not just X-Files. X-Files based it on a true story, a true X-File. But that's a whole nother topic to get into. Yeah, man. Whatever the hell that stuff is. But the UFO timeline, there's a tech bar on the UFO timeline. And there's not as many entries on it as there should be. We could fit, there's nothing in 1960. We know programs that took place in 1960. Let's get together and fill this all in. This is a community open project kind of effort type deal. So anyone who wants to, I can come up with a whole list of stuff just from my presentations and other stuff. We should sit down and come up with and populate this with some more data points, because I know we can come up with a more thorough timeline on the technology of UFO tech and when, where, and who developed what. You know, get it all in the timeline. Let's get it up there, searchable, so that researchers can have it as a permanent archive, and we'll also know where to find more information, because those names of the scientists and the studies are super important for being able to find and track down and source that intelligence, because Lord knows they declassify stuff every single day and they don't tell anybody. The only way you find it is if you stumble upon or you go directly to it, because you know what you're looking for, and it helps to know what you're looking for, and that's why it helps to have people like us populate this UFO timeline with more significant UFO tech events. So again, this may be the last time we talk, man. I want to talk about some of the technologies that they have. Some of these, let's talk about the drones and the lights flickering. Okay. So some of these drones that are flying over New Jersey have the ability to knock out the lights, do weird things to the lights. So that some of these time lapses show like the drones flying over and then the lights flickering out. The cars will power off and shut off. The engine will shut off and the power in the car will shut off completely. People's homes the lights will flicker, dim down. We had some weird stuff in the my lights don't usually do this. The last couple of days, like, have been dimming and doing this weird stuff with when we hear these, and we've been hearing a lot of helicopters flying around outside and stuff too with all that. It might be a low level EMP kind of thing. There might be some other type of EMP or other type of similar weapon that knocks out the power, that can knock out your power in your car and knock out the power. So that might be a part of what they're testing. It might be a part of what the operation they're going to run is. They don't be surprised if. So make sure you get things printed out in hard copy, book, important stuff. Just know that, electronics and stuff might not always be there, especially if this stuff really goes crazy, man. You guys got to worry about if they're planning to do a fake alien invasion, and they're going to knock out the power, right? Because ever seen the Twilight Zone episode where they shut off the power? Will the real Martian please stand up? So this was prophetic, with the warning that he gave and what he showed with this episode of the Twilight Zone, because nobody knows who the Martian is. No, I don't know if this is the one. There's a Twilight Zone episode where they basically just shut off the power. They come in, they EMP the town, and they shut off the power. And all the people start accusing each other of being, responsible for doing it. So everybody starts turning on each other in the Twilight Zone episode, because none of the power works, and nobody knows who's responsible or what's to blame. So I could see that something similar happening and then pulling it off, man. It's not like they haven't thought about this all before. But anyways, what's the only way to stop this madness? Was there a second part of that comment? I don't see it. Anyways, pretty crazy stuff out there. So who knows what could be reality or what they could do. But anyways, people started freaking out when they shut the power off, and they did all the work for them. They started killing each other and going nuts because there was no, anyways, there's the link if you guys want to jump on. I'm going to wrap this up here in the next 10-20 minutes. Getting tired here, and we pretty much covered everything that I had planned to cover in tonight's stream. But if anyone else has anything they'd like to add or could think of, I would love to hear it. Is scalar wave a legitimate term? Come on and explain. Come on, tell me why I'm wrong about scalar waves and what's up with this thunderstorm generator with the Hilsch vortex tube and what the heck they're making and what they're doing all there. All right, I'll check out your email probably tomorrow when I wake up. It's late and I'm ready to pass out, man. It's been a long week. How was your Christmas, everyone? Did everyone have a good Christmas? I see some of you had a good Christmas. Still have money left over to be throwing me $50 on, that's pretty fresh of you. I got $5 super chat and two $5 super chats and a $50 super chat. So somebody had a good Christmas, or is helping me have a good Christmas anyway. Yeah, I am about to crash, man. I am tired. Definitely about to fall out here. But yeah, it was a good stream, man. We talked about a lot of cool technologies and stuff. And I'll have to get, I don't know, who'd you like to see get back on the show soon? I guess Jack Sarfati's back from London, so I'm going to interview him at some point. But anybody else have any other suggestions? Oh, I did not catch that. That sounds super cool, interesting. Let's check that out. Anyways, I'm ready to fall asleep, guys. I hope you're had a good night, and I'm gonna get some rest. We'll get some more physics PhDs onto this, and again, if I'm wrong or have any corrections to make to anything I said here, please leave a comment and change my mind. Hell yeah! Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing, and peace be with all of you. Have a great night.